This is Tor Yora Simin Chaf Gimel, and we're talking about Shehiyah. Amar Rav Yehuda says, Amar Rav, and the name of Rav, Kol Tavach v'she'ena yodeya helchas shchita. Any person who is a butcher and does not know the halachas of shchita, asher lechol mishkadasa. You cannot eat from his shchita. Ve'eluhein, and this is the helchas shchita. These are the helchas of shchita: Shehiyah, darsa, chalada, hargrama, and ve'ikor. Shehiyah ketzad. What is shehiyah? Harei shehiyah lishchait v'gabei yadoi koidem shegamar shchita. If he began to shecht, slaughter, he lifted up his hand before completing shchita, v'shayu bein b'mezid bein b'shagig, whether it was intentional, whether it was accidental, bein b'oinus, even if he was forced, bein b'ratzon, even if he wanted to, the chazar, and then he returned it. Who I achar v'gamar shchita, so after he finished the shchita psula shchita the im shahaya shiyah. And or another return to complete the shechita for him, the shechita is pasal if he paused for a measure of shehiyah, bekama shehiyah, and what is this measure of delay? Kidei shechita acheres, enough time to form another shechita. Pasak Rashi, kidei shechita behema gasa l'shchayis gasa. Enough time to shecht a large animal for the shehiyah delay for a large animal. Daka, and enough time for shechting a small animal for a small animal. So the shehiyah delay time is enough time to shecht another animal. So if a large behemoth, takes about 15 seconds. That's 15 seconds. A small animal takes about 8 seconds. A bird takes about 5 seconds or 3 seconds. So there we go. That's the time. And regarding the shchita by which we measure, some says it refers to an animal that's already crouched prepared for shchita. That the measure only includes the cutting of the simonim only. In other words, delay is not preparing the animal, getting the knife, waking up from bed, washing the gobasser, all that stuff. It's basically enough to shecht another animal. But others say, some say the measure includes enough time to live, to lay down, to slaughter it. In other words, the animal's in front of you, you put it down, you put it up, you lift its head. It includes that extra time. And this is the primary ruling. Umiyu, however, ein misha'arav. There's no measure. It's not based on the slaughtering of all the simonim, but rather enough to shech the majority which constitutes a valid shchita. So not, a shchita where you cut through all the way and get almost to the spine. Enough to cut a majority of the simonim, like we learned last time. And so too wrote Rambam, Ella Shachileg Ba'if, except that he distinguished regarding birds. Shakasa B'dika Kiyad Jagba for Rotzav Shchita Daka. For a small animal, enough time to lift it, to lay down, to shecht it. Ubagasa Kidei Shagba Rotzav Shchita Gasa. For a large animal, to lift it, to lay down, to shecht the large animal. Ba'if Kidei Shagba Behema Daka Uriso Shchita. And for a bird, enough time to lift a small animal, lay it down, and slaughter it. Not a bird, apparently. Apparently, I don't know why he doesn't use the bird measurement in the bird. He uses only animal measurement in the bird also. Okay. Rav Alphys, and according to the Rif, Afilu Ladako Life, Misharenu, our Shir, Kidei, Shkita, Gasa, Varbasa. And according to the Rif, even a small animal and a bird is measured based on shechting a large animal together, lifting it and laying it down. Of Rush. And this is what the Torah's father thought also. So in other words, the time for Shehiyah is always based on the large animal and based on picking it up. So even if you're doing a tiny little bird, and the delay has to be long enough to basically set up a large animal and to shecht it. So now we're talking about 30 to 45 seconds. We're not talking about 3 to 5 seconds. El Shekasav. Apal gav dimisharenu kidei shchita gasa v'behemasa v'arvasas hainu duka lebehema. Even though that we measure that the shechting of a large animal together with lifting and laying it down applies specifically to animals, dafka lebehema. Dafka to animals. Aval la'oif, lo'i mishreinu, but this is not our measurement. Ella kidei, shchita behema l'chuda. We measure it by the slaughtering of the animal itself. Udala mustaver l'hakein kuloi hai l'shar behema v'brotza behema la'oif. And for it is reasonable to be lenient as to include the lifting and to laying it down for an animal, for a bird. There's no reason to do that. It's not reasonable. It's not reasonable to say add in for a bird the time it takes to also set up an animal. So therefore, a behema, that's one thing. You use a small behema, big behema, you use the big behema size. For a bird, you can't do that anymore. Shchata ma'at shahaya ma'at. If he slaughtered a little bit and then he paused a little bit, then he slaughtered a little bit, then he paused a little bit. If altogether there's a measure of shehiyah when they combine, so then that's considered shehiyah. If one slaughters with a dull knife, the Hoilchin, and he moves it, the Heavy, Kolayim, Kuloi, Rak, Shaloi, Kshera. And it's a dull knife and he moves it back and forth all day long. As long as it's not paused, then it's kosher. So he shechs with a full knife and he goes back and forth all day long and never removes it. But it takes him a long time to shecht. Okay, no problem. As long as he didn't do any shehiyah, it could take him longer than normal. It could take him a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to do it. No problem. V'hanai milai ba'oif v'achshera b'simun echad. And this applies to a bird whose valid shechita requires only one siman. Aval behema im ikar kashir shahaya b'shechita semiyot achrayna shel siman rishon. But for behema, if he delayed by a measure of shehiyah during the shechting for the final majority of the first siman, afal pi, even though shahochin v'hevi derech shechita pasal, even if you move the knife in a slaughtering motion, it is still invalid. Kevan shachat rai v'samanim miot anishar kachashov kishachat. Since once he slaughtered the majority of a simon, the remaining minority is considered already slaughtered. Okay. Umash and asachev einai nichshav min hashchita, and delay afterwards not considered part of the shchita. So therefore, if he delayed after the majority, so then that delay includes in Vahayu and is like cutting its hand or its leg. In other words, it's like now you're moving on to some other part of the animal, even though you're still cutting. I'm doing the cutting motion, but it's not the proper part. So therefore, that it's not considered like he's part of the animal. So therefore, that would be considered. That would be considered that shechting. So I lost my place for a second. Behind by the Rava Shahaya B'miyot Simana Mahud L'chad Perusha, and this is the question of Rava. What if he paused during the minority of the Simanim according to one interpretation? Rashi Pirush by the Rav B'Shehiyah B'miyot Basra. Rashi explained Rava's question as referring to a pause during the final minority. Ulakach Kosav Dafilu B'miyot Basra. And therefore, he wrote that even according to the final shalkana, shal veshet, with the kana of the veshet, shehi, a pause invalidates it. So even though he already did the shechting and did the majority, and the majority is good, but now he's still going to cut, and he pauses, then he goes back to continue cutting, that's still going to be considered a delay. Therefore, if he shechted the majority of a bird, or both the majority of one of them in a bird, or both of them in a behema, and then he paused while it was dying, it is preferable to strike it on its head rather to resume any slaughtering. Once he does shehiyah there, if he thinks he did the majority, let him not go back. It's better not to do shehiyah, let it just die, and then you could check and did the right, then it was good enough. But if you go back, then already you ruined that, and that's considered shehiyah, and then the whole thing could be considered a puzzle. Chen Kasa Bahag, the Halachas Goyos. The Halachas Goyos says, Shahaya Miyot, Samanim Beim, Beschila Beim, Besaif Aser. That if one did a shahiyah, a pause during the minority of the samanim, whether at the beginning or at the end, it is forbidden. Rambam Pireish Miyot Kama. The Rambam explains is referring to the initial minority. Aval im shachat roi, but if you did the roi, echad ba'ayif, oy roi shnayim behema, or the two roi, the two samanim from behema, afil shahiyah har big shera. Even if you pause a long time, it's a little kosher. Because once you did the raiv, that's considered a shechita, and now you want to come back and finish cutting off its head, go ahead. The shechita was valid. It's not considered a shia anymore. There was no shia in the actual shechita. The shia is after the actual shechita was done, and now it's like you're chopping off the rest of the head, no problem. Al-kain, kasam the oif, loy shayach, bekana. Therefore, he wrote that regarding a bird, shia does not apply to the kana. She'im shachat rubai, v'shaya boy, if he slaughtered most of it and paused, the shechita was already completed and it's kosher. And if he shechted only minority of it, he may return and continue shechting it wherever he wishes. Ella b'veshet, but the veshet, right? Levad shayach shehi b'miyat kama. Rather, only where the veshet does shehi apply only during the first minority until you get to the majority of it. V'hema af b'kana kigain shehi la'achar shchitas erubai. And the behema, even regarding the kana, since we paused after slaughtering most of it. Vadoni Avirash Kasav Ba'ashkenaz B'Tzfar Svat Noige Lahachmer Kirashi. He wrote the Rush wrote that in Ashkenaz and in France, which had similar practices at the time, talking about the 12th century. So it is you stringent like Rashi. Shachat Oif V'Shahaya Shia by Ve'ena Yedea Im Nikav Veshet Im Lav. If he shechted a bird and he paused during it, and does not know whether the veshet was punctured or not. Chayzu Shechet Hakana Levadai Mokamacher. You can return and check only the kana in another place. Umaniach ad shimavas, and he leaves it until it dies. A boitek haveshet mufnim, and then he checks the veshet from the inside. The im in a meisim by tfas dam bedoy shalai nikev ksheira. If he did not find a drop of blood in it, then it is known that it was not punctured and it is kosher. So then he wasn't sure. Then he checks a different place, and then he goes after the original place. If he sees whether they puncture or not, then that can be considered kosher. Now we move on to Shulchan Aruch, and this is Yora Chaf Gimel. This is Dinei Shehiyah, and this is 6 Sifim. Sif Aleph. Kol Tavach, she'eni Yodea halacha shchita asur lechem shchatai. Any butcher, any shaychit that doesn't know the halachas of shchita, you cannot eat from him. Ve'elohein is them, Shehiyah, Darsa, Chalasa, Grama, Ve'ikr. We're going to talk about what these are. Now we're going to talk about Shehiyah Ketzad. What exactly is Shehiyah? Okay? So, so he began shechting and he lifted his hand before completing the shechita. And this is whether it was intentional, accidental, it was done willingly, or he was compelled to do it. And he or another came and completed the shechita. And he paused long enough to lift the animal, lay it down, and checked it. Then she or she ba'ayif behema daka kidei behema daka v'shuzu v'shaychet ad raiv simonim shehu hakshar shchita. The measure of shehiyah for a bird, a small animal, is enough to lift a small animal, lay it down, and slaughter it to the majority of simonim, which is valid shchita requirement. So for a big animal, it's enough to pick a big animal up, lay it down, slaughter it. For a bird and a small animal, it's for a small animal to pick it up, lay it down, shecht it, raiv. Shchita psula. It's shechting, and if you do longer than that, then the shchita is puzzle. Of course, we're talking about the normal knife. Okay, we're not talking about dull knife. We talked before about the dull knife going back and forth all day long, and if I took him, fine. We're talking about a normal sharp knife that's actually going to do cutting. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about a super razor sharp that goes like in 3 seconds or 2 seconds through a big animal. We're talking about a regular normal knife, the average knife. That's the time. Lift it up, put it down, shecht it. That's the time. If it was a small animal and shia measure is enough time to lift up, lay it down and shecht it, a large animal enough to lift it up and slaughter it. And for a bird, enough time to lift it up, lift a small animal, lift it up, lay it down, and shecht it. The Yeshai rather say the shia she'oif kadesh arrives simen echad ba'oif b'li hagba v'yurtza. And some say that the measure of shihia for a bird is only enough time for it to shecht the majority of one simen in a bird without lifting it and laying it down. Lafi, the Vrehem Yesh Lahazir Lishkait Ba'if, the Chotzach Me'at Ad Shadam Yotze Vekbia, Sakinoi, Vivotza Vihitz Var, Shalai Yigmar Hashchita. And according to the words, one must be careful that if he began shechting a bird and he cut slightly until the blood emerged, and he lifted the knife to the neck, he should not complete the shchita. Birds are very, very quick, so therefore, if you began to do the majority of a bird, it's very quick. So once you do shihiyah, almost at any time for a bird, it's going to ruin it for the bird. Shema shachat mihushat, because there's a concern that perhaps he cut a small amount of the veshet. And once you do nick the veshet, now it's already a treifa. And if he only slightly lifted the knife, and there still is a concern. Because the shihiyah for measured bird is extremely small. The kedei shchitas roiv simen echad ba'oif who nase mahar, for extracting the majority of one siman of a bird is done very, very quickly. Vafilu amar shashoichet bari li, even if he says, I'm certain, shalai chatichsasi ela imar oir, I only did the skin, ein sumchav alav kevan shiatz hadam. We're not relying on him once blood emerged, because then we think we hit a vital organ. The im ba and if he came to ask after lifting the knife, what should he do? If he came, he said, listen, by mistake, I did a shahiyah, I didn't know what to do. I don't think I nicked the veshet. He should do the kana in another place. Afterwards, turn over the veshet and inspect it. And practically one should be stringent according with this opinion. So technically, you could cut the veshet also, don't only do the kana, but he should do it in a different place. So he should cut it lower. So if he cut the veshet and he cut the kana lower, then he inspects the veshet higher and sees if he nicked it, if he cut the place. So who shasat chak, but if it's a pressing need, like you taka need this bird, you're going to starve, or someone paid you big money and that's going to be a big, loss, whatever it is, for a poor woman or something, whatever it is, you have said but it's going to be a great loss. Then we could rely on the first opinion, because that's also opinion. That's, we don't like to rely on those, we try to say what Ikra din really is. But in a case of loss, we could say, you know what, maybe he was right, Taka, and we could rely on that as well. I don't like this idea of relying on things only in case of shasat chak, because if it's kosher, it's kosher, not kosher, not kosher. Obviously, you want to do better. You want to do best, obviously. But you're talking about patashkas, which chiti do patashkas. You're basically talking about, if you sell to a guy, okay, it's one thing, you sell to a guy. But if what you're doing is you take an animal and it's going to waste now that you shechted it and you don't think that it was good and you throw it out, that's patashkas, and it killed an animal for no reason. That's what tzar b'chaim, killed an animal for no reason. So all that is not good. If it's good, it's good. It's not good, it's not good. Don't give me this shasat chak stuff, okay? But Shulchan says shasat chak, so we can rely on shasat chak. So if you don't want to rely on regular, I guess not. Shulchan says don't rely on it usually, but shasat chak, you could rely on it. I would say probably that makes sense that you could rely on it always. Shulchan Aruch wants to be a little more machmir, but again, what's the point of being machmir? Ikar din is ikar din. Do what din says. Okay, this is what it says in Shulchan Aruch, and that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, and you follow. Okay, let's go on. Haga. Uminag pashot b'medinas elu lahatrif kolshu afilu mishahu bein oif bein behema. The whites were accustomed in these lands to render any shahiyah treif, even the slightest amount, whether in birds or in animals. And this is, you look at the Mordechai, and you look at the Mahari, Behilches Shchita. Ve'ein Lishanais, and this should not be changed. Ve'im dim acha Shchita gamoy oik sheitzabai munach beveshet oy bekana v'nishchat imoy trefa. And if after shechting, say a reed or similar object is found lying in the veshet or the kana and was cut together with it, so then it is treif. So if after the shechita he found a reed or something similar sitting in the veshet after cut, then it's treif. The vadai hutrach lahashais kama sadavar shula achashita simonim. Because certainly he needed to pause slightly while cutting the object itself before cutting simonim. So let's say something is stuck in the throat, in the kana or in the esophagus, and then you shechte and you see it, the object there. What happened was when you were shechting, the object was in the way, so instead of going on ear and continuing shechting the simonim, you shecht that object, which took your knife off of the simonim for a time. So that created a shahiyah, even if it's a shia kolshu. But according to the Ramah, shia kolshu, we're soymich on that to make it puzzle. It constitutes even a minimal shia, and it is treif. And you can look, this is Truma Sadesha, and says this. Sif Gimel. Shachat ma'at v'shoya ma'at chazar v'shachat ma'at v'shoya ma'at. If you shecht a little bit and pause a little bit and shecht a little bit and pause a little bit, im kishitzrach kol shia yeshi or shia shchalei psalo. If you put all the pauses together, come or actual shia, then it is puzzle. V'ya aminag b'chol inya treifa. And according to the custom, in any case, it is still considered treif. So the Torah would say it's still kosher. But the minig became to make it treif any shahiyah, because we're not sitting there measuring shahiyas. Okay. One who shechted an animal with a dull knife, and he delays by measure of a shia during the final minority of the first simon, it is still possible. So if you shecht and you do the majority, you're doing the final majority and you're doing shia, so it's possible. Simin, hey. Achar b'shachat roiv echad ba'ayif roiv shnayim v'hema she'ein shia p'silas. After shechting a majority in a bird, or both majorities in an animal, shahiyah no longer invalidates. L'fizeh, ein shahiyah b'kana ba'ayif klal. According to this, no shahiyah at all in a kana of a bird. V'yesh mi sha'aymer, because any part of the kana, you have to just nick the kana and you have to get the veshet. V'yesh mi sha'aymer she'kal shaloi nigmar shchita kol shein simonim b'saylas shiyah. And there's those who say that as long as he shechted both simonim was not complete, then shahiyah does invalidate. Yesh lahazir l'chosh l'dvarav, and l'chafchila one should be careful according to this account. Again, big machmer, it's not a kardin. You being machmer. Haga, the Ramah says, Afilu b'di eved haminig treif. So now he's saying the custom became even b'di ikra din now is treif. So no, the custom has now been adopted that b'di eved, this is now considered a treifa when you do a pause, even if you've done a majority. Ulakach im la'achar shachat roiv shnayim shri behema ha'ayif lemos yechzenu al roish l'misai v'lo yachsav shatai. Therefore, if you're shechting both the majority of the animal or birds living for dying, he should strike his head and killed rather than continue shechting, like the Torah said. Other opinion. There's also true brought in Trumas Deshin. Shachat oy v'shaya by v'shaya by ve'ena yoyde im the kavanah veshet. If he's shechting a bird and he paused during it, he's not sure whether he nicked the veshet. He should return and check in a different place. And leave it until it dies. And then you turn over the veshet and you check it from the inside. If you don't then we know that it was not punctured and it is kosher. So the veshet, which is the esophagus, shouldn't have blood in it. Sorry, the trachea shouldn't have blood in it. And you've turned over and you find there's no blood in it, you found out that you're not naked. But if you do find blood in it, then it must be that you opened it up and the blood came out of the esophagus and other places and it went in there, and therefore that's how the blood got in, and that's a problem. Okay. He says, the Rama says further, Ominag lahatref kol afilu lo yishaya rak miot kama dakna. And the custom is to render everything treif, even if he paused only during the initial minority of the kana. But any shor shahia in the beginning, the end, the middle, roiv, not roiv, it's considered the minig has become to say shahia now is possible, even if you do it on a big animal. Even a shahia on an animal, small on a big animal, the minig has become to say that it's possible. Vasar l'moichroi l'oivad l'oivda chavim kach ela yismuchu achar kach yuchu l'oivad chavim, and it is forbidden to sell it to a non-Jew in that state. Rather, you should kill it first and afterwards sell it to a non-Jew. No, you don't sell almost a live animal to a non-Jew. You don't sell a dying animal to a non-Jew. Wait for it to die, then you sell it to a non-Jew. Okay. Mishum de einai by Bekia and Bevdikas Haveshet Vechashina and Likvas Haveshet. Because we're not experts in examining the Veshet, we're always concerned that he punctured the Veshet. Umetam Zeh, because of this, Talash Hanoitzai Smina Aif V'Yatzadam. For this reason, if one plucks feathers from a bird and blood emerged, or if we cut a skin of the animal and blood emerges from it, that will also render it treif. For we're concerned about a punctured veshet. But if no blood emerged and did not cut through the skin, so then it's permitted. By shechting above or below and then checking the opposite place of the cut, so then lokach yesh lahazir shalai limrite and I'd say im yucha lishchait below zeh. Therefore, one should be careful not to pluck feathers if he can slaughter without doing so. So, we're talking about the skin and the feathers while you're preparing the animal. So, in other words, when you want to prepare the neck, you want to clear it from its feathers. So you very carefully take away things from the neck. If it starts bleeding, then we're concerned that you punctured the veshet, and we're not experts protecting the veshet, so already it's too late. Because again, you could probably puncture the veshet with a thumbnail on a bird. So therefore, when you're preparing the neck for shechita, don't pluck out feathers or cut the skin if you don't have to. Try to just move everything to the side. Give a good clean place and then shecht right through. That's the best way to do it. If you have to pluck the feathers, be careful. You start making it bleed, there could be a problem, and the minhag would be that it could be considered like as if you puncture the veshet, and that'll make it a puzzle.